Welcome to this review. Today I thought I would revisit an old classic. Now, sorry if I may repeat anything I said in my old review. I have not actually watched my old review of this game. Why? Because, well, it's just the horror. Anyway, did this game live up to the hype? No, I'm just kidding. This game is nearly 13 years old. The question isn't whether did it live up to the hype. No, the question is, why did this game get such contrasting reviews? As I'm sure most of you know, this is the first Smackdown game to be released on the PlayStation 2, which naturally meant this game had a lot of hype built up to its release, especially considering just how good the first two Smackdown games were. Well, back in 2001, a lot of professional critics said this game was great. Not amazing, but it was good. GameSpot said how it can be amazingly fun at times, and the production value laden with WWF panache is top notch. Of course, there were some critics that completely ripped it apart. One of them said it was the type of game that made people claim the PlayStation 2 is all about graphics and no gameplay, with no career mode, no WCW, ECW stars, and an incredibly shallow story mode. There's simply no reason to even rent this game. You see, I find these kind of polar opposites to be pretty interesting. So that being said, let's take a look at the game. First off, you have a really well done video introduction. The editing, the animation, and even though it's an FMV, the graphics do look amazing for the likes of 2001. The tone and the atmosphere that this video sets is perfect. But perhaps it was a bit too perfect. You see, a lot of people assumed that this was the actual gameplay graphics, which may seem silly, but if you think about it, this was the first Smackdown game to have a completely animated video intro, as opposed to using real-life footage. That and the fact that the PlayStation 2 was still a brand new cutting-edge gaming console at the time, it's believable as to why people would think that these were the graphics. Hell, just look at all these comments. But you might be thinking a lot of people just looked up gameplay pics back then, and you would be right, a lot of people did exactly that. But you also have to understand, back then using the internet was a special privilege of sorts. At least compared to what it is today. You see, back then you could only really use the internet at certain times of the day, and when you did, you would have to put up with this. I know I did, and when I did finally put up with that, it would often closely be followed with this.
Bradley, get off the internet, I want to use a phone!
Really, it was just normal to wait for a game to be released instead of looking up much information about it back then. So in reality, this badass video intro actually ended up being a detriment to the overall game. At least for some people, that is. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who didn't think the graphics were this good. I know I didn't. And why? Because I had the demo disc. So mine and a lot of other people's expectations were high, they just weren't that high. This is what I'm talking about. Just from the video introduction alone, people were already forming their opinions which conflicted with other people's opinions that were based on what they did or didn't know before going in.
WWF Smackdown! Just bring it!
Why on earth do you have Michael Cole saying just bring it? If you're gonna use The Rock's catchphrase, then have The Rock say just bring it, not Michael Cole. If you can't get The Rock to say just bring it, then you're better off not having anyone saying just bring it. Hell, as far as I'm concerned, this is also another detriment to the game. But moving along to the menus, and the menu screen looks alright. It looks pretty basic, to be honest. It has some kind of random honeycomb background thing going on. I don't know, it kind of looks like a pre-made template that was discontinued from another game, but that's not really important. What is important is the practicality, and it works fine. There's no bullshit animations to watch, and it doesn't have to load again when you go to a sub-menu. It works quick to get to where you need to go. Again, the menu looks uninspired, and maybe it's supposed to look minimalistic, but it lacks the Smackdown vibe. This game has a decent amount of matches to choose from, but they did remove some matches that were seen in Know Your Role, and one of those matches is a casket match. And this may seem like a bad thing, but if you play the casket match, well then it's really not a bad thing. There aren't really many arenas to choose from. You can choose the mat layout for any arena you want, which doesn't really make sense technically, but I've always liked being able to mix up the mats and the arenas. Most of the mats for the pay-per-view that happened during that time are there, just not the actual pay-per-view arenas. Well, you got one arena that says pay-per-view arena, but that doesn't really cover them all. But I do have to say, the WrestleMania 17 arena looks pretty good. The roster has a decent amount of superstars, although there are a few people missing. But, right off the bat, you have 35 wrestlers, including divas, to choose from. There are also 8 other people to unlock in this game, which brings the total roster count to 43, which again is actually pretty decent for a Smackdown game. This game did introduce a number of things that had not been seen before. One big example is the fully animated entrances. Most of these entrances are done pretty well. Even the tag team entrances look pretty good. Now, there are some graphical issues of course, like the stiff looking animation and the clipping as they step through the ropes, but it's easy to look past that, especially in 2001. The lighting for the entrances is done very well. In fact, it kind of makes the wrestlers look better than they actually are, if that makes sense. But sometimes the lighting doesn't work. For instance, Stone Cold Steve Austin never really had this kind of dramatic lighting in his entrance. I don't know, it just doesn't look right for him. It looks great for Triple H though, only because this is exactly what Triple H's entrance looked like. It's a minor nitpick, but I can't help but notice it. Overall, the entrances were a great step forward for the series. Now, for the gameplay. The gameplay is almost identical to the older Smackdown games. If you've played the older Smackdown games, then the learning curve for this game is like 10 to 15 seconds. It's not a bad thing because the gameplay for Smackdown 1 and 2 were, and still are, a lot of fun. It's fast paced and the action is continuous, along with the music which is very generic sounding, but it fits with the speed of the gameplay pretty well. This game was also the first game to have commentary, but it's not Jim Ross and King, or perhaps considering the time I should say Jim Ross and Paul Heyman. No, because this is a Smackdown game, the commentary is performed by Michael Cole and Taz. And it is pretty much unbearable. They are so inconsistent and they say the most stupid stuff. I always focus on the gameplay and do my best to forget they exist, which is easier said than done. The commentary is the same bullshit that was done on WWE Crush Hour. You know what I mean, right? How they actually record one or more lines and mix them together. For example, Michael Cole says something like, "This is an important singles match."
I don't believe it. Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! There's a hard shot. I've never seen a fight like this before. I can't believe it. What a move! What a move! I think it's over. Magnificent match. What will happen next? You can feel the electricity in the air.
It does not sound authentic or convincing in the slightest, and it doesn't flow very well. Although I do find it pretty funny seeing Taz in the ring while he's commentating. That's,
Raven, I don't get it.
You know, I think the reason why the gameplay is divided is because while a lot of people liked a similar gameplay style as before, there were those people who simply wanted an experience that was something fresh and new on the PlayStation 2. And they feel they didn't really get that. Not only that, before a new console, a lot of people just weren't that impressed with the gameplay graphics. But they did add some new things, like being able to execute not one, but 2 finishes with the L1 button. And you can even fight in the crowd, which isn't anywhere near as exciting as it sounds, unfortunately. Even back in 2001, being able to do this was pretty lackluster. At least for me. It's just a little bit of an area to fight in, you know, it really doesn't make a difference to the match. But you can find a weapon in the crowd, which is a little concerning to me. Why the hell would someone in the audience have a weapon? Seriously, call security! Holy crap! No, wait, hold on. Security are already there. I don't know. Now another first for this game, you can actually have up to 6 people in a tag team match. and up to 8 people in the ring at the same time in a Royal Rumble match, which is something they totally took advantage of for the new PlayStation 2 console. Although good luck actually seeing 8 people in the ring at the same time, at least for very long. You see, in the Royal Rumble match, getting eliminated is ridiculously easy. You will always see bodies flying left and right out of the ring so quickly that often the amount of people that keep running to the ring can't keep up with the amount of people that get thrown out of the ring. I do also think it's worth mentioning that you can have an Armageddon Hell in a Cell. That means there can be 6 people in the Hell in a Cell match, which is pretty cool, although they didn't bother to upgrade the Hell in a Cell itself. It looks so stupid how it's only the same size as the ring. Even back in 2001, it just looked weird. Although slamming people through the top of the cell was still pretty cool. The backstage area is impressive. You can pretty much go anywhere in the arena, and the boiler room is surprisingly pretty damn big. And you can even go to the outside of the arena, just like in Know Your Role. But this time, you can actually go to the WWF New York place, which is pretty cool to see. The only real problem I have with the gameplay is the reversal button. You push square to reverse, square and across, and with that combination, you can reverse almost any move. It's just a bit too simple to reverse, especially when you're playing with a friend. There's a good chance you'll see more reversals than any other kind of move, but thankfully this problem has been solved in the later games. One other little problem that I noticed is the player indicator. Each wrestler has a color, and they also have another color that is in a little box, I guess you would call it. Now, if the color in your wrestler's box matches a color that surrounds another wrestler's name, that means you are fixed on that wrestler. This works fine when it's a singles match, but when you get into a tag team match, or 6-man, and especially an 8-man match, well, this actually becomes a problem. If you are being attacked by a wrestler that you are not fixed on, then you will have to look at what color they have, and then push a button to select through all the colors until you have the right color. As you can imagine, when there are 6 or 8 people in the ring, it kinda becomes a clusterfuck. And having to do this is a bitch. This is because the game does not automatically focus on whoever is attacking you. At least not that I noticed. Yes, you can reverse anyone's attack no matter who they are, but you still have to cycle through all the colors, which means they can attack you while you're doing this. Again, thankfully this has been solved in the later WWE games. The Creator Wrestler mode is actually pretty damn detailed for its time. What, with the sliders that actually allow you to control specific parts of the face, that was actually a really cool feature. The only problem is that I couldn't seem to be able to get his mouth closed. In fact, no matter what I made him look like, he would always look pretty stupid. I ended up putting glasses on him in desperation. But yeah, it is pretty specific overall, and there are a lot of types of clothing and accessories to choose from. But if you want to make a serious looking wrestler, then good luck, because I couldn't. You can create a taunt, which is pretty cool. You can actually combine different types of taunts to make one giant taunt. And it's actually pretty fun. A lot of these taunts seem to be custom made, as I'm pretty sure you don't see many wrestlers using a lot of these. You can actually edit a wrestler's entrance and move list as well, which is actually a pretty fun thing to do. So yes, overall I'm pretty satisfied with the Create mode. It's not perfect, but it is fun to use, which is the most important thing. Now for the story mode. Oh boy, the story mode. You see, this is one aspect of the game that really isn't divided by the fans. Truth be told, more people kind of hate the story mode than love or even like the story mode. Why? Well, the story mode actually starts off perfectly well. You choose your character and you can choose most of the wrestlers there. Vince McMahon comes up to you and asks you if you want a shot at the tag titles or not. If you choose no, then your character will go after the WWF title. This makes the story mode look like you have a say in what you do. And yeah, it's true. This story mode is definitely less linear than Smackdown 1 and 2 story mode. Someone comes out wanting Austin, but you want Austin's belt, so you either talk smack or beat them up. You get to walk around the arena, which I thought was pretty damn cool at the time, Although for some reason, they give you a 2-minute time limit to walk around, which is pretty stupid because it means if you want to explore, you'll be running around the arena like a chicken with its head cut off, making sure you're not late, being wherever you need to be. Honestly, I never did find out what happens when the timer runs out, because I was too bothered by its existence to give a shit about it. At least in the Royal Rumble game, it's understandable-ish, considering it's an arcade port. Yeah, I can keep going on and on about this, but I think I made my point. So I talked to Michael Cole and I said something to him, and then Vince McMahon gave me a match with Albert. I beat him, he threatened me, so Test comes out on Smackdown. So as being Kurt Angle, I drove down with a milk truck, and instead of drenching him in milk, I just sit on the truck and drink it. So I beat Test in a submission match, and then boom! I'm facing Austin at WrestleMania. I beat him, and I win the belt. That's pretty much the main story. Seriously, that is it. To give you an example of how short that was, I usually listen to music while I record gameplay, and I only listened to like 5 or 6 songs before I beat Austin at WrestleMania for the title. This is the main problem that pretty much everyone had with the story mode, and overall game. Story mode had become a staple in the Smackdown games by then. And when you played the story mode, it felt as if you're playing a prototype. Yes, you can do other things like go for the tag belts, but it's not any longer than playing the main story. To be honest, the decision I made to go for Austin at the beginning was the only real choice I had that really did anything. Yes, you got other options to beat up or talk smack, but that don't really change the story at all. It all leads up to WrestleMania 17 anyway, which is a place you get to really quickly. Now, when I went to play the story mode again, I saw Kurt Angle was the champ. So out of curiosity, I went to play as Kurt Angle to see what would happen if I was the champ. And well, it is even more lackluster. You get one match where you defend your belt, and that's literally it. You unlock something though. Yeah, you can actually unlock something with just one quick, easy match. But this brings me to the unlockables. You unlock cards. Cards that have numbers on them. And each card represents an unlockable item which you can check at any time. Collect all the cards to unlock everything. It's a little bit unusual to have this card system, but it does work well. It's simple and straightforward. I can't really complain about it. So yeah, story mode is pretty underwhelming, not because of what you can do, it's mainly because of what you can't do. It's so sweet but short. This game, it had a lot of the new things people wanted, but it didn't really capitalize on them like people were expecting it to. Therein lies what the main problem was. And it's what ultimately split the fans. Yeah, I thought this was still a pretty fun game to play at times. It's just a lot of the new features, primarily the story mode, left a sour taste in my mouth. This is pretty much a bittersweet game for me. Anyway, that is my re-review for this game. I hope it was at least slightly better than my old review that I made 5 years ago. And yes, my next review will also be a re-review of WWE Smackdown Shut Your Mouth. So keep an eye out for that. Thanks for watching. Bye.